All right, so today we're going deep on something that, let's be honest, kind of shapes everything, right? Education. And you guys sent in some seriously interesting stuff on how different countries tackle this whole educating young minds thing.
Yeah, totally. It's a whole mix. We've got stories from students who've actually lived and studied in different systems, plus all this in-depth analysis of things like, well, those global rankings, like PISA.
PISA, yeah, that keeps coming up. So the mission here, right, in this deep dive is to figure out what can the U.S., maybe learn a thing or two from these other countries, especially the ones that consistently ace those tests.
That's it. We're after those golden nuggets of wisdom, those little tweaks that could maybe, just maybe, make a difference back home.
Okay, so where do we even start with all this? It seems like PISA gotta be our jumping off point, right? Like it's everywhere in these sources.
Right, like the go-to measuring stick.
Yes.
So maybe before we even get into the nitty-gritty, we should meet the man behind the curtain, so to speak, the PISA mastermind.
Okay, yeah. Pull back the curtain. Let's see who's pulling the levers.
All right, so enter Andreas Schleicher, German scientist working over at the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. This guy, he's the brains behind PIA.
The PS architect, right. But what's the big idea here? What's PS actually trying to, measure?
So it's all about assessing those so-called 21st century skills in 15-year-olds worldwide. And that's a key point. It's global.
21st century skills, yeah, that's the buzzword. But break it down for me. What exactly are we talking about here?
You got it. Think problem solving, critical thinking, collaboration, communication skills, the stuff you actually need to navigate this crazy world we live in. And Schleicher himself, he's pretty clear about this. He said, and I quote, PISA is not a traditional school test. It's actually challenging because you have to think.
Okay, so it's not just about spitting back memorized facts, dates, formulas, that kind of thing.
Nope. It's more about, can you use what you know? Can you apply it?
And speaking of that, one of the sources, they actually talked about taking PISA and how it felt, I guess, surprisingly real world, not just like textbook stuff.
Totally. It's about those real life scenarios.
Mhm.
Like, imagine you're trying to decipher the fine print of a health insurance policy, or
Mm.
maybe comparing bank fees, stuff like that. And here's a fun fact. For the math part, they actually give you all the formulas.
Oh, really? They hand them to you.
Yeah. The point isn't whether you can remember some obscure equation. It's, can you actually understand the problem and apply the right logic?
Makes sense. But let's be real, PISA, it's not exactly universally loved, right? There are people who have some issues with it.
Right. Critics going to critique.
Yeah.
So some point to potential cultural bias in the questions. Like, is it really fair to compare students from such wildly different backgrounds? Then there's translation issues, right? You're dealing with tons of languages. Can you guarantee everything's accurately translated?
Mm.
And also, sample size. Is the group of students they pick in each country really representative of everyone?
So valid concerns. What's Schleicher's response to all this?
He gets it. He knows PISA isn't perfect. No test is. But his argument is, hey, it's still the best tool we have right now for comparing education systems globally. And he's big on constantly tweaking the methodology, always looking for ways to improve. Data is key. Even if it's imperfect, it's better than just flying blind.
Okay, so data, even if it's a little messy, still gives us something to work with. And speaking of a data, that's where our treasure map comes in, right? The one our source mentioned.
Exactly. PISA results, they're like a roadmap. They highlight the countries that are doing something right, the ones that are teaching kids not just what to think, but how to think. And looking at this map, we see these different models of success pop up.
Models of success. Okay, I'm intrigued. Lay it on me. What are we looking at here?
All right, first up, Finland. The utopia model, some call it. What's striking about Finland? Trust. Huge trust in teachers. Less standardized testing. Teachers have more freedom with the curriculum. And get this, being a teacher, it's a seriously respected gig over there.
Wow, like a coveted position.
You got it. Which, attracts great people to the profession. And the whole vibe, it's all about nurturing those higher-level thinking skills, but without the cutthroat competition you see elsewhere, or even parents hovering over every assignment. Some American educators, they describe it as this silky paradise.
Silky paradise sounds pretty idyllic. And the story we usually hear is that, well, Finland, they're killing it because they have such low child poverty rates, right?
Yeah, that's the common narrative.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Finland's rise in those international rankings, it happened pretty recently, like within a few decades. So while low child poverty is a plus, for sure, it's probably not the whole story. Something about the specific changes they made to their education system during that time, That seems to be the real game changer.
Uh-huh. So it's not just like a rich country thing. There's more to it. Okay, so Finland, the utopia model. What's next on our world tour of education styles?
Next up, South Korea. Brace yourself, this one's intense. Think pressure cooker model.
Pressure cook. Okay, I'm sensing a theme here.
Yeah, so South Korea, they're all about testing, like hardcore testing. Kids spend insane amounts of time studying. At one point, the government even had to step in and, like, impose a study curfew.
Whoa, a curfew. Like you can't study after a certain hour.
Yep, trying to rein in the craziness. And our source even poses this question. Are Korean kids actually getting a sweet deal? Makes you think, right? What's the cost of this intense pressure?
Yeah, that's a tough question. And we see this pressure firsthand through one of the sources, right? Eric, the exchange student. What was his experience like in a Korean high school?
Oh, man, talk about culture shock. So Eric, he came from this, like, top-notch high school in Minnesota, and the first thing he noticed, resource difference, like, huge. His U.S. school had, like, 4 gyms, a hockey rink, the whole shebang. Korean school, not so much.
Okay, so facilities, not quite on par, but I'm guessing it wasn't just about the buildings.
Oh, no, not even close. The real difference, intensity, academic intensity. While his Minnesota school had musicals, clubs, all that jazz, in Korea, it was all academics all the time. And get this, it was totally normal for kids to, like, fall asleep in class.
Wait, seriously, they're pushing them so hard they're nodding off.
Yep. And teachers even had this thing called, get this, the love stick. Basically a little tap to wake up sleepy students.
Oh my gosh, the love stick. Okay, so school goes late, kids are exhausted, end of story, right?
Nope, not even close. After school, a ton of these kids head to Hagwons, these private academies, basically cram schools, for even more tutoring and test prep.
So it's like school, round 2.
You got it.
Yeah.
Parents are pouring money, time, everything into these Hagrons. And Eric, he was just baffled. Like, why duplicate the school day? It seems so inefficient to him.
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure, a lot of time, a lot of everything. Did Eric see any, like, downsides to this whole system?
Oh, yeah. The stress, man, it's palpable. The source even talks about this heartbreaking story of a student, G, and his mom. It just highlights the crazy expectations and how this, like, relentless pursuit of academic success can just crush people.
Pressure cooker is right. Okay, so we've got Finland, utopia, South Korea, pressure cooker. What's our last stop on this educational world tour?
Last but not least, Poland. And this one is a real story of transformation. The metamorphosis model, our source calls it.
Metamorphosis. Okay, I'm picturing a caterpillar turning into a butterfly, but with, like, textbooks and test score.
Pretty much. So Poland, they made crazy gains on PISA, like huge improvements. And here's the kicker, their child poverty rates. Pretty similar to the U.S., so it's not just a matter of having more money, it's something else.
A real Cinderella story, huh? A country facing similar challenges to the U.S., but they managed to turn it around. Okay, so let's bring it all back home now. We met Kim earlier, right? The American student from Oklahoma.
Right. Kim's story, it's super relatable, you know.
Yeah.
She's from Sallisaw, Oklahoma, and she stumbles across these international rankings. She sees Finland up there killing it, and it sparks this curiosity, like, what are they doing differently?
And Oklahoma, they've poured money into education over the years, haven't they? Trying to improve things.
Yeah, big time. Between 1969 and 2007, they more than doubled per student spending. More teachers' aides, better teacher salaries, smaller class sizes, all that. But in 2011, over half the state budget was going to education.
Wow, serious investment. So did they see results?
Well, that's the thing. Despite all that, a lot of students were still struggling, like with basic math.
That's troubling. So if it's not just about money, what's the explanation?
Right, the usual suspects come up, right?
Yeah.
Students not getting enough sleep, watching too much TV, family stress, all that stuff. All valid factors for sure. But the source makes a really good point. It's easy to fall into this trap of, like, blaming everything but the school itself.
Yeah, like a get-out-of-jail-free card almost. So Kim, she's fascinated by Finland. What does she focus on when she's putting together her report for her mom, who's, by the way, a teacher?
Well, she's got to impress her mom, who's an educator, right? So, yeah, the education system gets the spotlight. But she doesn't just stick to textbooks and tests. She talks about Finland's culture, you know, the people, the food, even their religion. Tries to give a more complete picture.
Cool. A holistic view. And what's going on in Sallisaw at the time? Economically, I mean. Does that play into Kim's perspective at all?
Oh, yeah. Big time. Factories are closing. People are losing jobs. It's tough. And even when a big local company announces an expansion, there's a catch. The new factory, it's being built in China. So, there's this feeling of like the world's changing, we need different skills to keep up. And that probably fueled Kim's interest in these other education systems.
Yeah.
What are they doing to prepare their kids for this new world?
Right, finding that competitive edge. So, back in the US, does Kim do anything differently after her Finnish deep dive?
She does. She wants more freedom in her learning, like she saw in Finland. So she signs up for an online biology course, takes charge of her education, and then there are her SAT scores. Reading, higher than a lot of U.S. seniors. Math, not so much. Kind of fits with those international trends we keep seeing, right?
Yeah, that reading math gap keeps popping up. Okay, so let's zoom in even further now. Really compare these systems through the eyes of, well, more exchange students. We've heard Eric's Korean adventures, but what about his U.S. high school versus Korea? Any other big takeaways there?
Oh, yeah. So, Eric, remember you went to a great school in Minnesota. And yeah, the resource gap was huge.
Mm.
But beyond that, it was the vibe, the culture. In Minnesota, it was chill, extracurriculars galore, musicals, clubs, you name it. Korea, laser focus on academics.
Two very different worlds. And we've got another voice in the mix, right? Alina, the Finnish exchange student. What did she think of American students?
Alina, she was a little taken aback, honestly. She was like, how is it possible you don't know this stuff? Basically, she was surprised by what she saw as a lack of like basic knowledge among some American students, which kind of supports that whole lack of rigor idea, right?
Yeah, that seems to be the consensus from a lot of international students. Like, U.S. school is just easier.
Yep, students from all over, whether their countries do well on PISA or not, they tend to agree. But the students from those top-performing nations, they're even more likely to say U.S. school is much easier. So there's definitely a difference in, I don't know, expectations maybe.
Interesting. Okay, so what about the elephant in the room, or rather on the football field? Sports. How do they factor into all this?
Good point. Huge difference there.
Mhm.
Most students from high-achieving countries, they said U.S. students value sports way more than back home. And even students from countries that don't do as well on PISA, they noticed it too. So yeah, it's definitely a cultural thing.
A different set of priorities, maybe? And then one last thing on the classroom vibe. There's something about how teachers give praise, right? Like how often they say, good job.
Yeah, totally. Students from lower achieving countries, they said U.S. teachers were way more generous with the praise compared to back home. Which makes you wonder, right? Does all that praise actually help? Or is it better to have a balance, some praise, but also constructive criticism and emphasis on effort?
Food for thought. Okay, so zooming out, looking at the big picture, what's the common thread running through all this? Finland, South Korea, those wildly different systems, what unites them?
Rigor. Both those countries, they have this deep-seated belief that education, it's serious business. More important than, sports trophies or even constant feel-good vibes.
So it's a mindset thing, a cultural value, and that translates into actual concrete stuff, right?
Absolutely. Tougher curriculum, more selective teacher training, tests that actually matter, and even like dinner table conversations about education that are, well, more serious.
Rigor is key. But one of the sources also said that true rigor requires, get ready for this, the freedom to fail. How does that even work?
Right. Sounds counterintuitive, but it makes sense. If
Yeah.
you're really pushing yourself, trying hard stuff, you're going to stumble sometimes. You need that space to
Yeah.
mess up, learn from your mistakes. And in these high-achieving systems, yeah, expectations are sky high, but there's also this understanding that failure, it's part of the process.
Okay, so embrace the struggle, learn from the falls. What about motivation, though? Do kids in these different systems, are they just like naturally more driven?
It's not just about individual drive, it's also about the culture. When everyone around you values learning, it's contagious. Plus, when students feel like what they're learning matters, that it's challenging to worthwhile, and that the tests actually have consequences, they tend to be more motivated. And of course, great teachers, that's a huge factor too. They can spark that fire.
Right, the teacher-student connection is so important. Oh, and there was that research on conscientiousness, right, and how it linked to PISA scores. What was that all about?
So researchers, they were analyzing PISA data, and they found this weird thing. How carefully students filled out those survey questions that come with the test. That was a crazy good predictor of how well their country did on PISA, even more so than things like socioeconomic status or class size.
Wow, really? Just like paying attention to the survey?
Yep. And the U.S., we didn't do so hot on that conscientiousness scale, even though a lot of students completed the survey. So maybe it's not just about showing up, it's about like how seriously you approach the whole thing, the whole learning process.
Interesting. Okay, back to Poland now, our metamorphosis friends. What exactly did they do to pull off such a dramatic turnaround?
So rewind to the 1990s, Poland's education system, it was not in a good place. They needed a major overhaul. Enter Mircea Hunke, the education minister. This guy, he wasn't afraid to shake things up.
The education revolutionary. So what were his big moves?
Right, a few things. First, they pushed back the age when they tracked students into different academic paths, like way back. Then, they made upper secondary school universal, everyone's got to go. They gave teachers more freedom, but also held them more accountable. And they pumped a ton of money into teacher salaries.
Okay, so delaying tracking, everyone gets a solid foundation before specializing. What's the thinking there?
It's about giving everyone a fair shot. Early tracking, you can pigeonhole kids, limit their opportunities. So Poland was like, let's level the playing field, give everyone more time to develop their skills.
And did it work? Was all that upheaval worth it?
Big time. PISA scores, way up. High school graduation rates, especially for disadvantaged students, also up. It's a real success story. And it makes you think about, how the U.S. approached reform. No Child Left Behind. It was all about testing, accountability, pressure. But did it really change the fundamentals?
All right, the core curriculum, teacher training, all that. So different approaches, different outcomes. And our source even gives us this smaller scale example, right? Gettysburg High School. What happened there?
So Gettysburg, they got rid of their lowest academic track, the one some call the applied track. And guess what? No one dropped out. And the teachers, they had to teach to a wider range of abilities, and it worked. Which kind of suggests maybe when we lower expectations for some students, we're doing them a disservice.
Makes you think. Okay, so last but not least, the teachers themselves, they seem to be at the heart of all this, right? The quality of teaching, it matters.
Oh, huge. Look at Finland. Their teacher training colleges, super selective. And become a teacher there. It's like getting into a top university in the U.S. and being a teacher. It's a respected profession. People want that job.
Not quite the same image here in the U.S., unfortunately.
Yeah, in the U.S., sometimes it feels like education, it's the easy major. And get this, in some states, you don't even need to major in math to teach high school math. And research shows future U.S. teachers, their math knowledge, it's often way behind teachers in other countries.
Yeah.
Like one source said, you can't teach what you don't know.
Right, makes sense. And then we have South Korea with their Hagwon system. It's like a whole other approach, right? Market-driven education.
Totally. Hagwons, it's like the Wild West of tutoring. Teachers are free agents. They get paid based on how many students they have and how well those students do on tests. And the best teachers, they rake it in. There's this one guy, the $4 million teacher, that's what they call him. But it also raises questions about fairness. Can everyone afford these high-priced tutors?
Yeah, the equity issue, definitely. So Finland focuses on training, respect for the profession. South Korea, it's all about competition, the free market. What about testing, though? How do these systems use standardized tests?
Different strokes for different folks, I guess. So Finland, they have this big, bad matriculation exam at the end of high school. This one test, it basically determines whether you get into university. So, yeah, huge stakes. The U.S., we have tons of tests, but few that really carry that much weight. And interestingly, Finnish students, they say school is hard. Those tests are stressful, which is different from what you hear from some American students, right?
Yeah, maybe there's a bit of a reality check there. Okay, last piece of the puzzle, parental involvement. Do parents in these different countries, do they approach education differently?
PISA data. It tells some interesting stories. Like in most countries, parents who volunteer a lot in extracurricular activities, their kids actually score lower in reading. And the source makes this distinction between PTA parents, the ones focused on school events, and coach parents, the ones who are more involved in their kids' learning at home. And it seems like that coach approach, that's the one that really makes a difference academically. There's also this whole debate about praise. Is too much praise actually bad? Maybe it's better to focus on effort, on trying new things, on embracing challenges.
Right, building resilience, that growth mindset. So to wrap it all up for you, our dear listener, we've taken you on a whirlwind tour of education, from Finland with their trust and autonomy, to South Korea with their intensity and pressure, to Poland with their remarkable transformation. And we've seen how all this compares to the U.S. through the eyes of students like Kim, Eric, and Alina.
And the big takeaways: rigor, valuing education as a society, and having amazing, well-supported teachers. Those seem to be the ingredients for success no matter where you are in the world.
And that brings us to our final thought for you to chew on. Knowing all this, all these different approaches, all this emphasis on rigor, what's one thing the U.S. could change, one shift in mindset or practice that could really make a difference for our students? Maybe it's about finding that sweet spot between support and challenge. Maybe it's about getting everyone on the same page about what education should even be about in this crazy 21st century. Lots to ponder, right? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.